to start this interview with some kind of good things, because just last week it was a press release of global Nestle about the financial and sales results of the past 9 months of 2015. And Russia was mentioned there 4 times in a very, very positive context. That is somehow unusual, but it was a position of global Nestle to say many times good things about business of Nestle in Russia. So I will start with a very strange and very unusual question, but the principal question, first question, what was the most joyful and most, I suppose, in your opinion, the best event in the life of Nestle Russia in 2015? Instead of all this grim background, crisis talks, and so and so.
First of all, good morning, everybody. And I think mentioning positively Russia as it should be, right? Because this is a big country, and you know, today we are living maybe what we call difficult times. But there was an interesting statistics that I saw a couple of weeks ago, and then we decided to present to our chairman, who was here a few days ago, and it says that by 2020 there will be the countries that will have the highest number of middle class emerging, and surprise, surprise, number 1 was China, but then it was made of BRICS. So it was again Brazil, Russia with about 50 million people, emerging class 50, yeah. So now we may discuss that these statistics may be right or wrong, I don't know, but for sure this is a country that will have an emerging class coming, a middle emerging class coming to consumption, and this is a country, and there will not be many countries like that. Now, it cannot, maybe it's not going to be 2020, it's going to be 2022, 23, I don't know, because things change fast, but in the end, it will be one of the countries producing an emerging middle class, and companies that are in the business of serving this emerging class, as we are, as P&G is, will have to be here and will have to continue to invest here, right? Because that's where the growth will come from. Now, when you ask me what was the most important or most positive, joyful thing that happened to us in 15, although 15 is not yet finished, and for us the last quarter is an important one, but I would say probably one thing, that we managed to keep our volumes in volume terms, right? Not in value terms, because value terms these days, comparison with the past, are less meaningful, because of course you have all the inflationary impact that we didn't have in the past in this way. So we manage overall as an organization in the most important categories to keep our volumes, right? And this, I would say, for us, it's a great achievement, because in the end, let's say, we have to measure today our ability to succeed also through our ability to keep our volumes. Just growing by value these days, it's not the same than it used to be in the past, right? So for me, this is the most important thing, because it shows that at the same time, we have done 2 things. We have been able to stay relevant to our consumers, right? And at the same time to adjust, which is something that large companies sometimes are not able to do in difficult environments because of many different things. As you can imagine, speed to adjustment is not always there in large organizations. So the fact that we remained relevant for our consumers and at the same time we were able to adjust, for me, is a great achievement.
I see the point. And returning back to this press release of big Nestle, I remember that Russia was mentioned, especially because of achievement on particular categories. And as I remember, it was chocolate, it was soluble coffee, and the third one, it was infant cereals, детские каши, as some kind of good examples. And I suppose different other directions and other categories that perform quite well.
Pet care as well.
Pet care. So. But this was in 2015, and of course it's quite difficult to make any kind of predictions. But do you see for 2016 that the same trends, or it may be some kinds of other anchors and drivers of growth, or just it will be more or less the same for the year ahead?
Well, it's extremely difficult to give prediction, but I'm going to tell you a story, a real story that happened to us, and I'm sure happened to many other companies. It was just after the Black Tuesday, famous Black Tuesday, right? When the rubble, and everybody got frightened, right? So what we did, we called for a meeting for the leadership team, right, which is in our organization about 130, 140 people. So we called them for a non-scheduled meeting, right? And the people, let's say, usually they were proactive. Nobody was saying one word, right? Everybody was scared. And the questions that were around were the typical question that you have in a crisis moment, but that nobody dared to ask, right? Are you going to restructure? Are you going to cut salaries? Are you going to this and that? Okay. So today, after 1 year, when are we going to have the same meeting, which is not going to be an unscheduled one, but this time a scheduled one, the climate will be different. Okay, I expect to have the same climate that we had in the past. Of course, with more concern, because anyhow, it's true that the situation today has settled, but has settled down, right? So people are concerned about many different things, right? Also personal things, family things. So, of course, there is not the same look than we used to have in 13, when just before the Sochi, let's say, everybody was smiling. But I don't think we're going to have the same negative climate that we had last year during the meeting we had just after the Black Tuesday. Well, does this mean that the situation has improved? I think yes. Does it mean that the situation has stabilized? Yes. Is it a guarantee that it will stay like that? I don't know. Because it's not entirely in the hands of, let's say, it's not entirely in our hands and consumer hands. It's a geopolitical situation that is what you know. But if things continue like that, I think there is an adjustment, an improvement versus the past. This is for sure.
And regarding this extraordinary meeting, and I ran last year and this year, especially this year, different interviews with different heads of Russian or Eurasian or East European subsidiaries of largest fast-moving consumer goods. All of them organized such kind of extraordinary meetings at the end of December. And as a part of the result of this meeting, it was quite interesting double decision that was implemented in 2015. And it's possible really to see, as I got from interview and from real data, two trends of big, very big corporations that active in Russian fast-moving consumer goods. First trend is the decrease, not the general brand portfolio, how it was presented by Procter & Gamble, but the decrease of the number of SKUs or varieties of the same brands. For example, you have the same brand, but maybe 5 or 6 different varieties, different sizes, so different numbers of SKUs, and it was indeed the radical, I might say, radical decrease of SKU by 20 or 30%, the number of SKU. And at the same time, the second coexisting trend is market launch of new brands and even new categories into the Russian market simultaneously. So my question, do the Nestle in Russia or Eurasia have the same two trends, and how these trends do coexist?
Look, in 2011, actually end of 2011, I can share this confidential, but I am convinced it will remain here in this audience. We had 1,230 SKUs, right? Today we had 550, right? We reduced it by more than half the number of SKUs in 3 years, right? And we used to make a joke in our organization, which is adopt an SKU, right? Because some of these SKUs sometimes, and this is unfortunate, but it happens, let's say, are so small that you really have to adopt them because they are alone, right? So,
children.
yeah, like a children, right? So adopt an SKU. This will launch this slogan. Yeah. So, and this is, let's say, a slogan that we use just to remind that an SKU has to earn its right to exist. Okay? Has to earn its right to exist. And it has to earn this right with our customers, because otherwise, particularly, if you consider, let's say, a discounter today, how many SKUs can carry, right? And particularly in our categories. Insoluble coffee, in chocolate, how many SKUs can it carry, right? Can you have yourself 5, 6 times more SKUs that your customer can carry? I'm not so sure, right? So, and an SKU has to earn its right to exist with the consumers. It has to be relevant to the consumer, right? With the customer and with the consumer. And therefore, we have to look back, and instead of adopting an SKU, which is left alone, we have probably to decide that it's not worthwhile keeping it, right? Just to please this or that marketing department, right? So, and the future will be more and more like that, in my opinion, right? Because also the shelf will be reduced by the presence of private labels that in Russia are not so big yet, but they will become. And therefore, this exercise will have to continue over and over again. We continuously have to challenge ourselves. Does this SKU have the right to stay on the shelf?
Yeah. And regarding the remaining SKUs, there are two perhaps related questions. First, as I've seen, and it was previously, many SKUs has double or even triple sources. Some of them were produced in Russia, when sold in Russia. Some of them produced abroad, and some of them produced abroad not by Nestle itself, by independent contractors. So the question over the past year, how such kind of combination or proportion have changed?
Well, the last case of SKUs imported, these are not so many in our case, because let's say Nestle is a large organization, so most of what is sold is imported by us. But most important, 90% of what is sold is manufactured by us, yes. Right? So, which is, let's say, a decision that was taken 20 years ago when we re-entered this market, because we have been in this market for many more years before. And Nestle as a brand was already known in the 19th century in this country. And let's say we decided that this is a country where you have to, if you want to be, it's one of those countries where you have to invest, right? And if you want to invest, it means that you have to have manufacturing premises that allow you to manufacture what is important for the Russian consumers. So that's why we have 90% of what we sell, which is manufactured here.
90% is manufactured?
Yeah, it's manufactured here, which, let's say, doesn't mean that we are not exposed to the problem of the exchange rate, because unfortunately the import substitution policy has not yet produced the results that we would like. Still, a lot of raw and packed materials are imported, unfortunately. And also those that are not imported, let's say, they are anyhow assembled here of important, let's say, elements that are coming from Europe or abroad. Therefore, anyhow, indirectly exposed to the exchange rate. But in fact, we have today capacity in place with our 11 premises, 11 factories, to produce 90% of what we sell. And let's say now, let me go back to the story of the SKUs. It is clear that, let's say, we have to make sure we have to help these SKUs to earn the right to exist, right? It's not the point of cutting part of the business for the sake of being more lean or more streamlined. It's that we have created over the years SKUs whose turnover is less than 10,000 Swiss francs or $10,000. They simply do not have the reason to exist anymore, right? So it was the approach that has changed to make sure that we become more simple, because we are large, so we have to become more simple, that we are more focused, and most importantly, that we have in front of us customers that are demanding, right? And we have to make sure, as I said before, that these SKUs are relevant for them. But the advantage that we have, as I mentioned before, that strategically we decided to be in this country a large operator, and that's why we have invested here, and this gives us a certain freedom to adjust our portfolio to the changing consumer needs.
I see. And you just skipped one question about the part of the dollar-nominated and ruble-nominated cost, because we already more or less answered to this one. But you mentioned that you are quite big local producers.
Yeah.
It's 11 factories.
Yeah.
And it's 11 factories, and with a smaller number of SKUs, but growing demand and the requirement of customers. You need to adjust to such kind of requirement in the terms of volumes, as you keep in volume or increasing volume, and in terms of quality. And this was why I suppose one of the key questions, because as I've seen in many companies in Russia, foreign companies in Russia, besides all kind of product innovations, besides new brands innovated here, a great part of the routine deal of many factories is a constant process innovation, saving on costs, improving on reliability and so-called centrality of processes, and different type of other process innovation. As in my experience and experience on several companies, they were so successful process innovations, they were recognized all over the corporation. Some of interesting solutions developed in Russia were exported, for example, the United States to Western Europe and so on. So my question was, how indeed, I presume that such kind of process, so process of process innovations does exist in Nestle for sure. So how this process is really organized during the crisis, during the possible cost savings, and also cost savings of personnel perhaps. And so how may you perhaps mention some kind of great achievement with process innovation inside Nestle Russia, and also some kind of motivations and drivers, and in general how you keep the innovativeness on the shop floor, in factories, and how you keep all this movement alive and active with process innovations.
Well, in Nestle all over the world, it's not only in Russia, we have our program, what we call Nestle Continuous Excellence. Okay, Nestle Continuous Excellence is a program like you have in many other companies, Six Sigma or others, Total Quality. We have developed our own process factory, initially factory, but then extended to the whole organization, which is based on what we call Nestle Continuous Excellence. Now, I will not get into the details of it because, of course, it's a complicated, but is essentially started with the factories based on one concept, which is TPM, what we call Total Performance Management of our lines, and we have extended, let's say, all over the world. We have, as you can imagine, a few hundreds of factories in the world, and let's say Russia was one of the countries which was identified amongst the pilots. And today, actually, it would be interesting to see that during the crisis we have even accelerated it, right? We have not actually reduced but accelerated. Today we have a large percentages of our lines that are already passed the gate of what we call this total performance management system. Now, did this help to reduce our cost? It's not only about reducing our cost, it's also about improving our quality, reliability, asset intensity. So it's not only about cost. In the end, it generates, let's say, savings over the time, but it's not only about cost savings. One of the parts that this NCE is strong is improving quality, right? So we said, in essence, we are here to delight our consumers, not just to have, let's say, and we have to delight them with the quality that they want, right? So if we are able to do that, then we keep our relevance. If not, if our aim is to reduce, let's say, the defects of our problems, well, in the end, still there is one too many, right? Not too much. So the aim is to make sure that in the end you have product that delight our consumers. They don't have to call us and say, well, you know, I got a foreign body in this, I got an hair in this chocolate. This is not the aim. And then the aim is not to reduce these numbers. The aim is to make sure that they will call us and say, what a great product you have. Right? So that's what we mean delighting. And in the end, our TPM system is aiming also at this. Now, coming back to your question about cost, well, it is clear that in a year like 2015, how did we manage to maintain our volumes, right? And I have to say, this is probably something that companies, including us in the past, were not able to do, because in the crisis of 1998, in the crisis of 2008, most of us had done the mistake to increase our prices above what was the consumer capacity to absorb it. So I think that our different processes, but not only about processes, I have also to spend my word about the ability of the Russian team to mobilize, which is unique, I think, in this country, that you will not find in many other countries. This capacity of mobilization, apart from the processes, has allowed us to generate savings with creativity, with effort, with sacrifice, at the point that we were able to go back and say, well, you know what, That's what we want to do. We want to make sure that we increase the prices at the level that the consumer will be able to afford, okay? Keeping in mind that we want to maintain our volumes and coming out of the crisis stronger, and that's what we are ready to give in terms of savings. And of course, by having this balanced approach, we manage to achieve what we want to achieve, which is essentially keeping our volumes and be ready for the years to come, not to start for a low base, but to start from a strong base.
Well, you see, in your previous answer, you almost answered my last question, and it was quite a personal question. I put it beforehand, but Maurizio has a very unique experience inside Nestle. It's a unique experience regarding internationalization. And as I learned, you started to work with Nestle in Italy, then you moved to France, then you worked for Middle East, then you work for the big regions that embrace Asia, Africa, and Oceania. Then you headed some of Nestle subsidiary in the former Soviet Union, and now you are heading the whole Eurasia from the Russia, Moscow base. Yeah. And you, regarding back this, you already mentioned mobilization capacity, but regarding back, you are very diverse and really sometimes unique, in my point, international experience. What are maybe other unique features of Russian management and Russian business you had to face and you are facing now? What is really maybe called absolutely unique in Russian business, in Russian management, even with comparison to other countries of the former Soviet Union?
Well, it's not an easy question, but let's say let me answer with two folds. First of all, I think as a leader in a country like Russia, which is a country made of competent, proud, and experienced people, you have to earn their respect as a leader, right? So first of all, you have to earn, because you can have, you can have the best CV in the world and having traveled abroad, but in the end, when you come here, you have to earn their respect, right? And you have to be able to convince them that what you, let's say, propose, that the direction, the strategic choice that you make are the right one for Russia. So having worked abroad help you in one thing, that as I used to say, each country is different, each people is different, but there are patterns. Okay? As a leader, you have to be able to recognize these patterns. And these patterns are slightly different here, slightly different there, but in the end, these patterns, if you are able to recognize, you will be able to apply it all over or in many different countries. And Russia in this is not so much different. When we experience here a certain number of situations that are peculiar to Russia, right? But in the end, if you are a leader, you are able to recognize that this is in the same pattern that you have been able to face in another situation, in another geography, and that these kind of solutions are those that may work. And in the end, let's say, we as leaders of organization, we deal with people, right? So in the end, you can recognize the patterns, but in the end, those that are able to find the appropriate solutions are your team, is the Russian team, because let's say we have 10,000 employees and we do not get to 25 expats overall. So you imagine that our team is made of experienced Russian one. And I, again, was impressed when we were sitting with our chairman a few days ago, and we made a round table and we asked the people to introduce themselves, and then they say how many years they spend in Russia with Nestle, or in general with Nestle. You're talking of people that spent 19, 20 years, 25 years with the organization. And those are the people that will come with the real solution. So as a leader, you identify the partners, you are able to transfer your leadership, but then they have to come with the solutions.
So I mean, you should accept Russian solution of the Russian problem.
Well, it goes without saying, because in the end, we operate in this country, right?